I stood at the edge of the resort's grand fountain, the one they built without my knowledge on my own land, as water exploded from every pipe, geysering into the sky like a suburban Yellowstone. Deck chairs floated past cabanas. Screaming guests trampled over the "Welcome to Paradise Pines" sign. HOA Karen was wading waist-deep, mascara streaking, shrieking into her phone. "Shut it off! Shut it off!" But there was nothing she could do. I was the county water manager. And this was me turning the faucet of hell to maximum. Tell me, what would you do if someone built a resort on your land, tried to evict you, and forgot you control every pipe in the county? I'd been gone less than a week. Just 5 days at a regional infrastructure conference in Reno, networking with other county water managers, hashing out statewide water policy, and presenting a case study on rural irrigation valve fail-safes. When I left, my land was quiet, peaceful, just the way I'd designed it. A long gravel driveway wrapped around the perimeter of my property, leading to the modest ranch house I built with my own hands. 10 acres of golden brown hills, a natural spring-fed pond out back, and a sloping ridge that caught just enough sunset to make you feel like you were living in a painting. But when I pulled back into my driveway, sun just cresting the edge of the hills, I didn't see my front porch. I saw scaffolding, earth movers, cranes, bulldozers. Massive concrete trucks churning up red clay where my garden used to be. And worst of all, people. Dozens of construction workers in high-visibility vests, hard hats, and boots, swarming over my land like they were building the next Disneyland. My jaw locked. My tires crunched over gravel until I parked dead center in front of a massive steel skeleton that had been erected over what used to be my orchard. I climbed out slowly, heart already thumping. Somewhere in the distance, an air hammer fired off like a gunshot. Someone was yelling for more conduit over here. My mouth felt dry. I wasn't just confused. I was disoriented. The last time I'd seen this place, I could still hear birdsong and the rustle of wind through pines. Now all I heard was diesel engines and the scream of rebar being cut. I didn't even get a chance to find my bearings before a man approached me, stocky, tan, and smirking like he'd just won the lottery. He was holding a clipboard and wearing a lanyard that read, "Site Foreman, Paradise Pines Development." I didn't speak. I just looked at him, waiting for something, an apology, an explanation, a sign that this was a horrible mix-up. Instead, he chuckled. "You're trespassing, buddy," he said, pointing his pen toward my truck. "We're on schedule here, so I'd appreciate it if you parked off-site like the others." I stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. "Off-site?" I said slowly. "This is my land." His smirk didn't falter. "Not anymore. HOA signed the development permit 3 months ago. This is communal zoning now. You must have missed the rezoning notice." He said it like I was the fool. Like I had accidentally wandered onto someone else's backyard barbecue. I took a step forward. "I'm not part of the HOA. Never have been. This is private deeded property. Been in my family for 34 years. He didn't even blink. "Yeah, well, maybe you should check with Karen. She's the one who pushed the paperwork through. You'll have to take it up with the board." "The board? The board?" My vision narrowed. He turned his back on me before I could answer, already shouting toward a cement mixer to hurry it up before the next inspection. I walked back to my truck in a daze. The house, my house, was now barricaded behind a row of temporary fencing and a banner that read "Future Home of Paradise Pines Resort Spa." The font was cursive, tropical. Like they'd plucked it out of a Florida travel brochure and decided to slap it over my legacy. I stormed past the signs and onto the porch I built with my father. The doorknob was wrapped in caution tape. A printed paper was stapled to the siding, "Unsafe for occupancy per HOA Directive 41A. I ripped it down. The door was locked. The deadbolt had been replaced. I stood there for a full minute, stunned. Then I pulled out my phone and called the sheriff's office. Busy signal. Called the county assessor's office. Voicemail. Called the building department. "Sir," the woman said after hearing my name, "our records show that parcel is under HOA management as of last month. Are you calling to appeal the code violation?" "Appeal?" I repeated, ice settling in my chest. "It's my damn property." I didn't wait for her response. I turned on my heel and marched back toward the construction trailers that had been set up like a miniature town hall near my pond. That's where I saw her. Karen, HOA president, mid-50s, bob haircut, a pink pantsuit that probably cost more than my truck. She was standing with 2 other board members and a real estate guy in a slim-fit suit, laughing, holding a mimosa. I knew who she was from the newsletters. Even though I never attended a single HOA meeting, I was never part of it. My land was grandfathered in, outside the covenant lines. She knew that. We'd had that conversation years ago. She turned just as I approached, lips already curling into that tight-lipped grin that HOA Karens train themselves to weaponize. "Ah, Mr. Nash," she said brightly, like she was greeting a reluctant donor at a fundraiser. "You came back sooner than expected. What the hell is going on?" I asked, voice low, tight. Her smile didn't move. "Oh, don't be dramatic. We sent you the notices. We even posted them on your door. It's all very standard procedure. You're building a resort on my land," I said flatly. "You've locked me out of my own house. You think that's standard?" One of her cronies, Board Secretary Marvin or Martin, I didn't care, stepped in. The land was reclassified under Article 8, Subsection B of the Community Zoning Addendum. You had 60 days to dispute it. Since you didn't, your rights were assumed to have lapsed into communal designation. I stared at him. "That's not how land ownership works." Karen pulled a thick manila envelope from her tote bag and handed it to me with mock solemnity. "Here's the official notice. You're being evicted, effective immediately, due to noncompliance and vacancy. The board has reallocated the space for a higher community purpose." I didn't take it. "I've lived here 20 years. I didn't vacate. I went to a water conference in Reno." "And you left the land idle for 7 full days, she said, raising an eyebrow. "That qualifies under HOA abandonment criteria. You're welcome to file an appeal, of course. We have forms inside." "You're trespassing," I growled. "Every one of you is trespassing. This is private property and you know it." Her smile never cracked. "No, Mr. Nash, it was." The envelope dropped at my feet. I didn't move. I couldn't. My whole world felt like it had been rewritten while I was gone. But I wasn't stupid. I wasn't just angry. I was suspicious. Because when I picked up that envelope and flipped through the pages, I saw something that made my stomach churn. The plat map had been altered. The owner name changed, my signature forged. The notary seal was from a clerk's office that had shut down 3 years ago. They hadn't just bullied their way in. They had faked the records, forged documents, stolen my land on paper before they stole it with bulldozers. And now, they were building a luxury resort on top of my legacy. My hands shook, not with fear, with restraint. Because I knew if I made one wrong move, they'd paint me as a threat, a violent dissenter, another angry landowner who couldn't let go of the past. But I wasn't some random homeowner. I was the county's water systems manager, and while they may have forged deeds and bribed officials, they'd made one mistake too many. They forgot whose name was on every water valve blueprint in the county. They forgot who signed off on pressure specs. They forgot who controlled the flow. And as I stared at my ruined land, my locked house, and the woman smirking with a glass of champagne on my porch, one thought took root and refused to leave. You took my land. But you built your empire on my pipes, and I know exactly how to make every inch of it drown. The next morning, I sat in my truck outside the county recorder's office with a legal pad in my lap, 2 black coffees in the cup holder, and an expression that hadn't changed since the night before. I hadn't slept. Not really. I'd spent the night in a cheap motel 20 minutes outside city limits because I couldn't even get into my own damn house. I'd called 3 locksmiths, and all of them refused to help once I gave the address. "That's under HOA hold," one of them mumbled before hanging up. I knew something was wrong, and I was going to peel back every filthy layer until I found the root. The recorder's office was quiet at 3 a.m., the kind of sterile silence that makes you feel like truth lives in the file cabinets if you know which one to pry open. I marched to the counter and asked for the most recent deed record on parcel 117B, my land. The clerk, A woman with brittle blonde hair and thick glasses tapped a few keys and smiled like she was reading a weather report. Yes, that parcel was transferred to Paradise Pines Community Trust last month. HOA affiliated. She slid a printout toward me. All records are available digitally now, of course. I stared at the paper like it was written in blood. There it was, in black and white. Owner, Paradise Pines, Community Trust. Not me. Not my family. Not the name that had been on the property for 34 years. This is a mistake, I said slowly. That transfer's fraudulent. There was no sale, no consent. That land was never up for anything. She shrugged. You'll have to take that up with the clerk's office. Which I did. And the assessor's office. And zoning. And planning. And by 2:00 p.m., I realized what I was dealing with wasn't just a bureaucratic screw-up, it was a coordinated attack. Every office I walked into treated me like I was interrupting their lunch break. One woman looked me up and down and asked if I'd recently changed my name. Another asked if I was the disgruntled guy from the HOA incident. At the zoning counter, a man with a crooked tie leaned back in his chair and smirked. If you're here to protest the Paradise development, you're late. Permits are already processed. Ground's broken. Nothing to be done. It's my ground, I said. And those permits are based on forged deeds. He tapped the side of his head like he was knocking on wood. Then you better find yourself a real good lawyer. So I did. Or at least, I tried. I contacted a real estate attorney I'd worked with on a water easement issue last year. He declined the case after one phone call. Conflict of interest, he claimed. Called another. Sorry, HOA has my firm on retainer. A third didn't even pick up. It was only after 5 rejections that I realized what was happening. Karen wasn't just playing dirty. She'd saturated the local legal field with enough influence to choke off my access to basic representation. That night, back at the motel, I finally got a call back from a lawyer 2 counties over. A woman named Carla Cruz. Sharp. No nonsense. The kind of person who didn't care about HOA cocktail parties or fake plat maps. Send me everything, she said. Every deed, permit, notice, photo. And don't talk to anyone else. I did, scanned every document, every bogus notice, and there were dozens of them. Apparently, while I was at that conference, the HOA had flooded my address with fake violations, unauthorized exterior fixtures, landscaping noncompliance, absentee residency, and something called community disengagement. Each one was laughably fabricated, but together they formed a paper trail of neglect. It was a setup. A file being built layer by layer to justify the seizure, and it wasn't just paperwork anymore. 2 days after I filed a formal complaint with the County Inspector General's office, my electricity shut off. The gas went next. Then, water. I called each utility in turn, and each one claimed I had requested the shutoff myself. Faxed forms, signed and dated, the woman at the power company said. I asked for copies. She sent them. The signature was close, but not mine. The handwriting was too neat. Karen's neat. I printed it out and pinned it to the motel wall with the others. A mosaic of theft. A masterpiece of audacity. Meanwhile, the resort construction roared ahead like nothing was wrong. From the side road I'd once used to haul fencing supplies, I now watched men in safety harnesses install luxury solar panels on top of what used to be my hay barn. A spa tent was being erected next to the pond. They drained it, turned it into a chlorinated lagoon, and paved over the wildflowers to lay a stamped concrete walkway. Luxury rustic, the sign said. It looked like hell, but it was making progress. The kind of progress that costs millions and doesn't stop just because someone screams about stolen dirt. And then came the security goons. I pulled up one afternoon, parked along the ditch line just outside the temporary fence, and tried to photograph what they were doing to the main barn. I was maybe 10 feet from the property edge when a black SUV pulled up. 2 men in matching shirts stepped out, one holding a walkie, the other with mirrored sunglasses and a smugness that smelled like sweat and contract bonuses. You can't be here, he said, hand resting on his belt. This is an active construction zone. This is my land, I snapped, holding up my ID. The land you are trespassing on. The taller one stepped forward. We've been told to remove unauthorized persons. Last warning. I didn't move. He stepped closer. So did I. Touch me, I said, voice flat, and I'll have you charged with assault on a public official. You don't look like a cop. I'm not a cop, I replied. I'm the county water systems manager, and I know exactly how deep your illegal sewer tap runs under that foundation. That paused them. Briefly. Then the walkie-talkie crackled. A female voice. Karen. Is he resisting? I didn't wait. I turned, walked back to my truck, and drove away. But I was boiling. And more importantly, I was done playing defense. That night, Carla called. Her voice was tight, serious. They've changed the assessor's record, she said. Backdated plat maps, fake notarization, the works. You were scrubbed from the system 10 days ago. Legally, right now, you don't exist on that land. That's a crime, I said. A felony. Sure is, she said. But good luck getting anyone local to investigate. I pulled court dockets. The judge who signed the emergency land transfer? Karen's ex-brother-in-law. Used to do real estate arbitration. Guess what firm he worked for? Let me guess. Tremblay & Co. Same as the resort's development partner. I sat in silence. How do we fight it? We document everything, and we find leverage. They made mistakes, sloppy ones. We just need the right pressure point. I looked up at the growing wall of papers I'd pinned to the motel wall. Permits, photos, power shutoff slips, forged signatures. And then I looked at the schematic I'd printed out 2 nights ago, one of my own design, a pressure grid map of the regional water system. One that ran right through the Paradise Pines development. One that I had personally maintained for the last 11 years. They thought they had cut me out. But the whole time, they were building their empire on my infrastructure. And I was the only one who knew how to flip the valve from irrigation to annihilation. The night of the town hall meeting was humid with tension. You could feel it before you stepped inside, thick in the air like the charged silence before a lightning strike. I parked my truck at the very edge of the lot, headlights off, engine ticking down as I watched the parade of HOA loyalists stream through the doors in pressed polos and sun hats. Some had kids in tow. Others were on their phones, snapping selfies beside a giant vinyl banner stretched across the rec center doors. Paradise Pines, a community vision realized. I clenched my jaw so hard, I felt the molars grind. That land they were toasting? That vision? It was mine. Every square foot of it, paved over and handed out like free samples at a shopping mall kiosk. And tonight, they were going to pretend like I didn't exist at all. I stepped inside and immediately felt the shift. Heads turned. Conversations quieted. Some people looked away. Others watched with smug curiosity, like they were waiting to see if I'd cause a scene. The room was packed. Rows of folding chairs aligned military style facing a long table at the front, behind which sat the HOA board. Karen sat dead center, flanked by her cronies like she was the queen of some suburban court. She was dressed in ivory, lips painted, pearls around her neck, her hands folded calmly on the table like she hadn't just tried to erase my life off the books. I stood in the back, arms crossed, waiting for the public comment portion. They ran through their agenda first. Budget updates. Beautification projects. A 5-minute slideshow on eco-friendly design at the new Paradise Pines Resort. Construction shots taken over the last 2 weeks, featuring what used to be my backyard. People clapped, smiled. One man shouted, "It's about time we had something nice." And the crowd murmured in agreement. I felt like I was watching a neighborhood cult cheer for their own hypnosis. Then came new business. Karen cleared her throat. Before we proceed to open forum, we need to address an issue of concern that's come to the board's attention, namely, an ongoing disruption to community harmony. My eyes narrowed. She didn't use my name. Not yet, but the moment she reached under the table and pulled out a manila folder, I knew exactly what was coming. "We've received reports," she said calmly, "of a former resident, Mr. Nash, engaging in erratic behavior, including trespassing, harassment of contractors, and threats toward HOA board members and county officials." The crowd stiffened. Murmurs rippled. Additionally, she continued. We've been provided with evidence of psychological distress, erratic voicemails, emails sent at odd hours. One individual claimed he referred to himself as a saboteur and made threats regarding our water systems. That last part made me bark a laugh. Loud, bitter. Karen's eyes snapped to me. She gave a tight smile. Mr. Nash, she said, please sit down. We'll give you a chance to speak in due time. You just accused me of mental instability in front of 100 people, I said, walking down the aisle toward the front. You forged my deed, stole my home, shut off my utilities, and now you want to frame me as unhinged? You've got some gall. She didn't flinch. Mr. Nash, for your own safety and the safety of this community, we've filed a petition with the county to request a 72-hour wellness hold, a public safety order. I froze. The room did too. A what? The sheriff's office has been notified, she continued, flipping the folder shut. It's standard procedure. We're concerned you may be experiencing a breakdown. I stared at her. You're trying to have me committed. We're trying to help, she said sweetly. We can't let one person endanger what this community has worked so hard to build. It was the most brazen, calculated, chilling thing I'd ever seen in real life. They weren't just trying to take my land. They were trying to erase me, label me unstable, discredit my claims, disappear me for 72 hours so they could finish the resort ribbon cutting without any interference. I looked around the room, searching for any flicker of support. Most people looked down. A few nodded along with her. And that's when I knew I was completely alone in this room. A man clapped slowly. One of Karen's friends. He snapped, he said to his neighbor. Just like she said. I didn't wait for the deputies. I left before they could arrive. By the time I reached my truck, I could already see lights in the distance, sheriff units heading down the main road. I turned off my phone and drove east, fast and silent, weaving through side roads I'd memorized years ago during waterline inspections. I didn't stop until I was 50 miles out, parked under a cluster of old pine trees near a county maintenance depot I used to work at. I slept in my truck, windows cracked, hands trembling from rage and cold. The next day, I tried to return to my land, but the entrance was sealed off. Construction fencing had been reinforced with metal panels. Resort access only, no trespassing, signs lined the entire perimeter. My mailbox was gone. In its place was a digital kiosk that read, Guest Check-In. The house I'd built with my father was now draped in banners and streamers. The porch had been replaced with faux stone tile. Every inch of what had been my life was now branded Paradise Pines. And that's when I saw the sign posted to the right of the gate. Grand opening. 11:00 a.m. Live music. News media. Ribbon cutting. Today. Of course, it had all been timed. The fake eviction. The utilities. The commitment hold. They wanted to make sure I wasn't even in the county when they unveiled their theft to the press. I backed up slowly, pulling onto the ridge behind the property where I could see everything. The lot was filling fast. Cars, SUVs, reporters, drones, buzzing overhead. Karen was there, front and center, giving a tour to a local news anchor in heels. She was smiling, laughing, pointing at eco-sustainable features she'd commissioned over the foundations of my barn. I didn't feel rage anymore. I felt cold, focused. The kind of clarity that only shows up after your last nerve has snapped. They'd taken everything from me, except one thing. Knowledge. Because what Karen didn't know was this. Every pipe under that resort, every line of irrigation, every automated valve, every pressure chamber they'd installed without consulting real engineers, it all ran through my schematics. And when I left this job last year, I never filed the final valve equalization report. The pressure limiters they assumed were active, they weren't. The irrigation grid under Paradise Pines was overpressurized. Every time their system ran, the PSI built up silently, slowly, invisible to the naked eye, but cumulative, dangerous. And with the push of one button, my button, I could make that entire resort implode under a wave of its own stolen water. They built their kingdom on stolen earth and untested pressure lines. And I was the engineer who wrote the manual. The grand opening continued. Champagne corks popped. Karen held the giant ribbon scissors in her carefully manicured hands. A crowd of HOA members cheered behind her. I looked down at my laptop, the pressure control system still logged in from the secure county VPN. I hovered my finger over the initiation command. Purge sequence armed. One more insult. One more photo op. That's all I needed. That's when I'd make it rain. They thought I was defeated. But I wasn't just coming back. I was about to baptize Paradise Pines in the flood they didn't see coming. The moment I pressed the button, it felt like flipping the universe's fuse. A quiet click echoed from my laptop as the purge protocol initiated. No alarms, no dramatic countdown. Just one cold, silent confirmation on the screen. Maintenance flush active. Pressure equalization override bypassed. I leaned back in my seat, tucked under the tree line on the ridge above what used to be my home, and waited. Karen was on stage, beneath a canvas awning, standing in front of a ceremonial ribbon held up by 2 HOA board members like they were presenting royalty. Behind them, Paradise Pines stretched across my land like a parasite. Palm trees planted in imported soil, a fake lagoon shimmering under filtered light, rows of cabanas arranged with military precision. Reporters circled with microphones, snapping photos of Karen's smug grin as she spoke into a mic. Paradise Pines, she said, is not just a destination, it's the beginning of a legacy. This community chose beauty, we chose progress, and thanks to the HOA's leadership she didn't get to finish. It started with the fountains. The ones flanking the resort entrance, carved limestone spouts gurgling polite streams into decorative basins, suddenly erupted, not trickled, exploded. 10-foot jets of water shot upward with the force of a fire hose, shearing decorative bricks from their foundations. Guests shrieked, ducking as a wave blasted across the entry plaza, knocking over one of the ribbon holders. I saw Karen flinch. Then the main line kicked in. Beneath the resort's spa wing, a 6-inch water main surged to 4 times its rated pressure, unrestrained by any limiter, because I never signed off on the final installation. The underground pipe buckled. Then it burst. The explosion was muffled, subterranean, but the aftermath wasn't. A geyser tore through the artificial turf near the pool deck, rocketing a lounge chair 20 feet into the air. People screamed. Water sprayed in every direction, soaking power cables, speakers, buffet tables. The DJ's console sparked once and went dark. And still, the pressure rose. Toilets exploded. I don't mean overflowed. I mean exploded. Inside every cabana, in every luxury suite, pipes burst from their housings and fired ceramic shrapnel like fragmentation grenades. One reporter caught it live on camera as a guest emerged from the restroom screaming, soaked from head to toe, shouting something about the urinal just blew a hole in the wall. I watched the chaos unfold from my perch, calmly sipping the motel coffee I'd brought with me. Across the faux lagoon, the lazy river began to churn. Not ripple. Churn. The gentle current meant for margarita-sipping tourists was now a frothing, violent circuit of sewage-tainted fury. Inner tubes flipped. Guests clambered over plastic palm islands. A man in a silk robe floated past face down, his cocktail still somehow upright beside him. Then the waterfalls joined in. 3-tiered decorative cascades powered by pressurized pumps. Pumps that, thanks to my purge command, were now drawing from a surging municipal line with no failsafe. They detonated like ruptured fire hydrants. One tore off the stucco wall behind it, revealing the flimsy frame of the spa suite. Another shot backward into a VIP cabana, blasting a hole in the thatched roof and sending guests scrambling for cover. Fire alarms began to wail, triggered by the deluge flooding electrical conduits. Sprinkler systems engaged, confused by the system breach, adding even more water to the disaster. Every door in the resort opened at once as panicked staff and guests poured into the courtyard, slipping, yelling, filming. It was glorious. Then I stood up, walked down the ridge, and entered the scene, calm, dry, clipboard in hand. I stepped through the resort gates like Moses parting the chaos. The air was thick with soaked perfume, chlorine, panic. Security guards shouted into radios that no longer worked. One of them spotted me, tried to block my path, and slipped on the flooded tile, landing flat on his back. I stepped over him. The front desk was empty, phone lines blinking like a hospital on lockdown. I walked past it and straight into the resort foyer, where Karen, soaked, mascara bleeding, heels in one hand, was yelling at the sprinkler system. When she saw me, she froze. I stopped, standing in the center of the flooded marble lobby. Water swirled around my boots. "Karen," I said, flipping open the clipboard. "You are in violation of County Plumbing Code 23.4a, 26.2c, and 45.9, among others." "You," she gasped, voice cracking. "What did you do?" I held up a hand. "Don't speak. Just listen. This structure, this entire resort, was built on illegally claimed land, using unapproved infrastructure, with falsified permitting documents, and no final inspection by a licensed county official." "That's not true!" she shrieked, but it came out weak, panicked. "We had approvals." "The permits forged?" I cut in. "Filed through a judge who's now under investigation for real estate conflicts of interest. And your water system?" I tilted the clipboard. "Illegally tapped into municipal lines without pressure regulation, which, by the way, violates at least 3 state-level health codes." Behind me, the county inspector stepped through the door, flanked by 2 deputies. I didn't even have to look. I knew they'd arrive. Carla had made sure of it. "Ms. Withers," the inspector barked. "Step away from the desk. This man sabotaged us," she wailed, pointing. "He destroyed, he. But no one was listening. Because the inspector had already begun photographing the damage, documenting the warped pipes, the soaked electrical boxes, the power conduits hanging like jungle vines from the ceiling. "This entire facility is shut down," he said flatly. "Effective immediately. Fines pending. Initial estimate, $2.8 million in code violations." Karen collapsed into a lobby chair. Someone filmed her with a phone. A soaking wet HOA board member vomited into a potted plant beside the concierge counter. Over the next 48 hours, everything unraveled. The county filed formal fraud charges against Karen and 2 other board members. My lawsuit, backed by Carla and bolstered with every shred of evidence I'd collected, was accepted without contest. The judge who'd overseen the land reassignment recused himself. The county vacated the HOA's rezoning claim. And Paradise Pines? Bankrupt. The investors fled. Insurance refused to pay. Media coverage labeled it the Great Resort Flood. I was offered interviews. I declined. I didn't want a book deal. I wanted my land back. 3 weeks later, I stood in front of what was once the resort gates. The luxury arch had collapsed, warped from the water damage. The fake waterfall was dry. Power had been cut. The HOA had officially dissolved after the majority of members voted for disbandment to avoid liability. Karen was under house arrest. No HOA, no ribbon cuttings, no stolen speeches about legacy. Just me standing on what was mine again. I reached into my truck bed and pulled out the final sign. Just a plank of cedar I'd carved by hand, same as my father used to. I hammered it into the mud with 3 clean strikes. One word, burned deep across the front in blackened letters. Mine. Then I turned and walked back into my land, my legacy, my home. The water had washed it all away. Every lie, every banner, every fake signature and plastic smile. It didn't just flood their pipes, it drowned their arrogance. And now, every time I hear the wind ripple across the hills again, quiet and clean, I remember what they tried to take from me, and what I took back with nothing but knowledge, patience, and pressure.